Yeah, so I kind of zoomed over that part, but tropospheric ozone harms crops. So basically like leaves and any part of the plant, the the ozone molecules can deposit into the plant's stomata, which are these little openings basically that are microscopic. It's how the plant, it's an opening on how the plant like absorbs other gases. It absorbs CO2, it absorbs one of the things that can absorb through its stomata are ozone or is ozone. And so that ozone is an oxidant, and it basically will oxidize a lot of the carbonaceous parts of the plant, which are what makes the plant what it is. So with ozone on crops, if ozone is exposed to crops for a long period of time, you'll start to see the crops turn brown or turn gray. They'll start to die. They'll start to decay. And so it's a really big problem for agriculture. High ozone can harm agriculture, which then has a long chain of effects on, food production and things like that. So yeah, it's an important reason to be concerned about air pollution. There's a question here. Good microphone. Yep.
Your presentation basically dwelt on some harmful effects of air pollution. And basically, you also mentioned it in vehicles. Where you are coming from, do you have any rules? Do you have any regulations to reduce air pollution at where you are coming from? Do you have any rules, regulations regarding the reduction of air pollution?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
From vehicles.
From vehicles specifically. I think we're gonna hear from experts on that later in the week. But if I could talk briefly, and let me just speak to the regulations from my country, because I don't know exactly the regulations in Ghana, but there's things that car manufacturers need to do. They need to install equipment that is in the tailpipe or that can capture some of that emissions from coming out. And this prevents things like the nitrogen oxides and the VOCs from coming out as much. There's also filters that are used to make sure that the particles don't come out as much. Also, things like improving the efficiency of the vehicle is important. So how much travel you can get per unit of fuel. That also helps the pollution problem as well. So there's regulations on all of that, essentially. And I think we'll hear more for later in the week on that. So I'll defer the conversation to them later. Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation. You talked about how ozone reacts with other air pollutants. What are the implications to air quality management in that case? And B, what role does weather play in terms of formation and dispersion of ozone?
Yeah. So I'll start with that last question. The weather is a really important player in air quality. And so you remember that London smog I showed? I didn't say this, but one of the big things that happened was there was also a temperature inversion during that time period. And so basically it was because of the weather system, the atmosphere had basically a cap. It had like a ceiling where gases and particles could not escape. They were sort of trapped in this layer close to the Earth's surface because of the weather. And so whenever that happens, we have even worse air quality than we would otherwise. I had trouble hearing your first question though. Could you just repeat it real quick?
Yeah. What are the implications to air management?
For implications from what?
Ozone reacting with other.
Oh, yeah. So the implications of that are that you need to have kind of for air quality managers, they need to be able to sort of work together with like different groups, I would say, because, we have maybe rural parts of the world where there's a lot of biogenic, emissions. And then you have urban cities where there's a lot of anthropogenic pollution, human pollution. You mix those two together, that's where you get really bad ozone problems. And so the air quality managers have to work together. Like the big cities have to work with the more rural or state or region authorities in order to address the problem. So I think we should probably stop here and take a break. Okay, one last question. And if Mr. Oppo is around, you can come dismiss us.
Dan, thank you very much for the beautiful lecture. I have this challenge about the number of days that air pollution it's over the years. You have informed us this morning that about 5 million people may have died as a result of air pollution. And there are other figures provided by various organizations. One I found WHO, and a recent one by Economic Forum, providing different figures. 7 million for WHO for 2022. And then World Economic Forum saying it's about 9 million. How can we harmonize this so we can have a figure to say, well, this is how much air pollution is actually people in terms of what authorities.
The number that I showed was 2017. So that might be one cause of discrepancy, is just different years. The 5 million was 2017, 7 million might be 20. Yeah. But also, yeah, Steve, do you want to say?
So these global estimates for the global burden of disease are constantly being updated. And they do their best job at trying to improve the estimates, but they're constantly bringing in new information. And so they do change. And they change by, a couple million people from one evaluation to the next evaluation. And, these are estimates. And the goal of these estimates is to be able to focus the limited resources that are provided for working on these types of issues on what's the most important. If you did this estimate and you found out that 2 people died every year from air pollution, you wouldn't put any money into it. But it's millions of people a year. And if the estimate is 5 million or 7 million or 9 million, it's still a lot of people every year. And, but what this really highlights is that they're estimates and that they will change. When I first started working in Ghana about 10 years ago, it was very early on in the global burden of disease. Household air pollution was the #1 cause of death estimated by the global burden of disease. Now 10 years later, it's not estimated to be #1 anymore. Why? Because there's a lot more information about household air pollution in Ghana. It's still a major problem in Ghana, but it's no longer estimated to be #1.
Thank you very much. We'll end here. It's time for cocoa, coffee, or tea break. And then there's a summer hat on my left-hand side like this. When you come out of the hall or the center, you will see a hat over there. Kindly walk majestically to the place and take whatever you want to take in. There's cocoa, coffee, and tea. Once you are in Ghana, maybe you would like to take cocoa. Yeah. Ghana, our cocoa is good for everything. Good for everything. It's actual natural cocoa, and it has a lot of, how do you call it, disease reduction potential, and then also can also give you a lot of energy that you need. So it's not adulterated. It's a natural one. Yeah. Thank you very much.